What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I have Clan Collection deck skeletons coming for you. This has been a lot of testing coming through, and I have some interesting decks that I think a lot of people might be interested in seeing. And this is going to be for pretty much every build of spikes that you can probably think of, excluding some really niche, kind of unplayable builds. This is pretty much what are going to be the competitive decks that you can bring into this format. So yes, they are skeletons. These are what you can base your deck on, and then change out cards as you wish, change up ratios, maybe switch out some cards or cards you like a little bit more. There's always room to explore, and that's why I wanted to bring you skeletons instead of full lists. So first we have Pure Dudley. Now this is a deck that gets really interesting with the new reverse, because we have Emperor that is finally able to use its skill on rear guard because we don't have Nova, which is very exciting. So getting into the grade 3 lineup, we of course got 4 reverse, we got 4 normal Emperor, and then we got 2 of the Dudley Lucifer, and then 4 of the grade 3 Heel Guardians. Now, what we want to be on is the Dudley Emperor reverse. This card is very strong because going second, we get a lot of extra drive checks, we get a lot of power, we get superior calling anything from the deck, which could be awesome, as well as it's a Dudley name, so the Emperor on the rear guard now has full access to its plus 5k and putting cards in the bottom of the deck. This can be very strong because we're playing cards like Agile Fullback, and we're playing other rear guards like Treasure Black Panther and Breachbird, which have effects that put them into the soul, but with Dudley Emperor, we can put them onto the bottom of the deck to have synergy with our Dudley Emperor reverse. This is really strong because it allows us to get our bonus effects from, say, Panther, Breachbird, other cards like that, and even Fullback, and not have the downsides of them going into the soul. We can trigger our other cards with it, bringing some great synergy. The Lucifer is good as always because it is a Soul Blast for a counter charge. It can be very good when you're using a lot of CB to either set up, or you need that one extra CB or one extra rear guard call to kind of get your turn to be extremely good. So Emperor Reverse lets us provide 5 attacks per turn with the synergy with Dudley Davy and Dudley Daisy. From its effect, when you have no grade 2s or less on the field, you can counterblast 1 Soul Blast 1 of the attacks to call any card from your deck. This can be used to call a lot of different cards. Usually you want to call Davy because it has synergy with it, but it can be very strong. So getting into our grade 2s, I have 2 Panther, 2 Breachbird. You can kind of play either or. You can play 4 of either. 4 Panther or 4 Breachbird. You can keep the 2-2 split. Doesn't really matter, but they both have the same idea of they use a resource. Breachbird puts a card from the back onto the deck, and then Panther Soul Blast 1, and they would go into the soul, but the way you can stack the effects is you can use Dudley Emperor first, they give it the 5k, and put it onto the bottom of the deck, so they don't retreat into the soul, they go to the bottom of the deck and they activate Emperor Reverse's skill. Very strong. Then we have 4 copies of Dudley Davy. This is again one of the strongest cards in the Dudley engine because it can just call anything from the deck for a counterblast, which is very strong because it can do that mid-battle. So you can call Dudley Daisy, and that could call Dudley Lucifer. We could call Dudley William to move your markers around. Very, very strong. And then we have 4 copies of Agile Fullback. This card is insane because it can attack from the back row, which can be very strong because that is a free multi-attack. So if you could call it via Ambush Dexter or its own skill, say you called it on grade 2, you're able to push it into the soul, call it, and then you get that free multi. Doesn't matter it's in the back because Dudley Emperor will put it onto the bottom of the deck. Very, very strong. The grade 2 lineup is a mix of utility and power coming from the Breachbird or the Panther, depending on whether you want to play more aggressive or not. And of course, the Fullback and the Davy are just very strong cards that are pretty much now new staples in either Dudleys or just spikes in general. Getting into the grade 1s, Ambush Dexter and Verity, fantastic consistency pieces. Dexter is one of the best cards to call with Dudley Emperor Reverse because it can put an Emperor into the deck, call 2 more, or call Lucifer to refund the counterblast. Very strong cards in general. Dudley William, very good for moving markers around, so say it leaves the field for Emperor Reverse's skill. So say you need to push it into the soul to move the markers around, then it isn't on the field to count as a grade 1 for the Emperor Reverse skill, so you get your superior call. You can play Gloria in the spot. I just do like the idea of moving the markers around and getting more crits on my rear guards. Can be very strong, since if you are using Agile, you want a way to move that marker up so it can be used on the extra rear guard. So that's why I play William in this deck. And then 2 copies of Dudley Daisy. Card is very, very strong with Dudley Davy. You can call it out on mid-battle to call Lucifer, another Emperor. Very, very strong. And then Team Crushing the Meta actually showed a combo where you can Soul Blast 1 to call another Emperor, and then when it returns to the deck at the end of the turn, you can lock the Emperor to save that Emperor to basically get rid of the downside of using the Dudley Daisy. That is very awesome. Then the trigger lineup, I personally just prefer a crit 4 draw with the 4 Heel Guardians, all very strong. You could play more draws in this deck because you are playing Force 2 usually, but again, I just like playing crits. Crits are always very strong. And moving into the next deck, this is the Rising Emperor Reverse. So this deck is more focused on playing more copies of the cards that want to go to the soul or leave the field. So we got the 4 copies of Panther and 4 copies of Breach. You want to play these because they do exit the field to kind of fulfill the Emperor Reverse condition. So for the grade 3s, we got 4 copies of Nova, 3 copies of Reverse, 3 copies of Bull Spike, and the 4 Heal Guardians. Bull Spike is just very strong because you can move the crits around, you can move the force markers around, and you can retire rear guards and draw cards. It's just the best supplement to the Rising Nova and the whatever other grade 3 you want to play. Bull Spike is always there for you. Yeah, so Nova, when it copies the Emperor Reverse skill, will be able to get the call off because you are playing 4 copies of Panther again, 4 copies of Breach again, and then 4 copies of Gloria. So you're always able to have the cards exit the field, and since Nova is usually calling more grade 3s onto the board, you can just lock whatever non-grade 3 you have, and then you have the Reverse and the Bull Spike on the board for the skill, so it's very, very strong. Oops, misclick there. And then we have 3 copies of Rona because we do want to search up our Dudley Emperor Reverse or a Bull Spike, kind of fulfill whatever you need. And then into the grade 1s, we have again 4 copies of Dexter, 4 copies of Verity. Consistency is king. We always want to see our cards. And then Dexter is really strong because you could call a mid-battle with Emperor Reverse. Counterblast 1 to put a Bull Spike in the soul, to call 2 more, or call another Nova or an Emperor Reverse. Whatever you need, it's a way to generate 5 attacks. Again, a lot of these decks do generate 5 attacks because you are calling an extra card that could call 2 more cards. So you could have it call Davy in the other deck, call Daisy, call Lucifer, or Dexter, call 2 more Bull Spikes. Then you can keep moving the markers around. It's very, very strong. And then we have Machine Gun Gloria. Of course, this card is very strong because you're able to put a full column onto the bottom of the deck, get 2 locks, and then you can fulfill the Emperor Reverse condition immediately, and you get 4 drives. You can play this again in the Dudley variant. I just like it in this variant a little bit more because you have more space in the grade 1 since you're basically just shoving a bunch of consistency pieces in your deck spots. And then for the triggers, again, we're just playing 4 draw PGs, 8 crits, and then more Heal Guardians. You can play draws if you want, I just prefer crits. Getting into the next deck, this is the Dudley Rising Hybrid. This is playing the Lucifer and the Rising top ends. You want to play, again, 3 copies of Bull Spike, 4 copies of Nova, 3 copies of Lucifer. Just very strong because it has synergy with your Dudley cards. And this deck can play Agile Fullback since it is not going to be staying on that rearguard back row circle to block out the reverse effect. It becomes very strong with Rising Nova. So this allows Nova to put the Force 1, Force 2 behind the Vanguard circle to start out with, so you can attack with your Agile Fullback, move the markers away from it, then you can always have a way to have that card. Very, very strong card because it's very sticky, it can't be attacked, and it can provide soul for you every single turn, so your other cards that eat a lot of soul won't be eating nearly as much when you have Fullback. Then we of course got 3 copies of Rona because you really want to call out your grade 3s, 4 copies of Davy because it is the best card to call with Dudley Lucifer. Early game, it provides you a lot of rushing because you can call out Dudley Daisy and call out Dudley Lucifer at expense of your soul. Then we of course have Dudley William in the deck to kind of provide a little bit more soul and move the markers around without having to spend for the Bull Spike. So then you could always search it out with Dudley Davy, and it's another Dudley name to kind of call out with your Lucifer being procced by Nova. Unfortunately, in this deck, Daisy doesn't work as well because it's not being called by a Dudley, because it's being called by Rising Nova and not Lucifer, but it's still on the deck because calling it with Davy and getting Davy to call Lucifer can be very strong. And again, for the grade 1s, 4 copies of Dexter, 4 copies of Verity. You really want consistency in Nova. I'm going to keep saying it because it's very important. And then 4 crits, 4 other crits, and then 4 draw, the staples and the standard. And on to the most staple of the Nova decks, we have the Nova Bull Spike Spiking. This deck got a lot stronger with just the introduction of Agile Fullback. Surprisingly enough, Agile Fullback solves a lot of problems with this deck. So we got 4 copies of Nova, 3 copies of Bull Spike, 3 copies of Spiking Cyclone. You get to restand your Agile Fullback on that Force 1, Force 2, very strong, as well as Spiking Cyclone provides the Rising Nova extra power, so you're not having to move the markers to him so you can save soul. And then in the grade 2 spots, we have 4 copies of Rona, again, consistency is king, 3 copies of Breach Spurt because it can leave the field and provide you a lot of extra draws and recycling, which is important. And then 4 copies of Agile Fullback. This card is insane when you see it on turn 2 because you can put it behind your Vanguard and it's constantly there attacking for 20, 20, 20, 30 with the markers on it, providing you soul, always getting free extra multis on it. Very, very strong card. Then in the grade 1 spots, we actually can play Gary Gannon because we want a little bit more consistency It's really good because you can put it behind the Vanguard or put it wherever, attack. You can push it into the soul and kind of draw 2 fresh new cards. A great way to filter, a great way to get some soul. Then of course, again, you're seeing a trend, 4 Dexter, 4 Verity. These cards are very, very strong, especially in Rising Nova decks, just because you need the Secret 3s. And then we have another interesting spot in this deck, Cheer Girl Franny. Now this card is very strong because it allows you to do with 0 damage what you couldn't do before. So with the introduction of Heal Guardians, you can give yourself 8 damage, and with Heal Guardians and Dexter, now you can call the Heal Guardian down, get a damage, have Dexter call, counterblast 1, put that Heal Guardian into the soul, and call whatever grade 3s you are missing for Rising Nova. Cheer Girl Franny will now allow you to call it, put whatever else to the bottom of the deck, and get a counter charge. This can be very, very strong because it lets you get the full Rising Spiking combo with no cards in the damage zone starting your turn out. And the full combo being Agile behind your Vanguard, 2 other cards, Agile attacks, Nova attacks, stand the Agile, Agile attacks, attack with the rear, move the markers, attack with the rear, move the markers. You're getting a lot of attacks, very free. You're only spending 1 counterblast per turn unless you're searching, and then Franny just lets us keep very, very low CB, so we can either use plussing with like cards like Rona or Dexter, or use our Spiking Cyclone skill with maybe our opponent denied us and swung out of rears. It can be very, very strong in that case. If you don't want to play it, if you think the deck doesn't CB enough to justify it, play more Ganon, play Wonder Boy, play Gloria. There's a lot of other good slots. That's why I'm introducing these skeletons, because there's a lot of different cards to play in Spikes. So I think that about wraps it up. I wanted to keep it quick and brief because, again, I don't really want to preach at whatever I think are the perfect ratios. I think a lot of people can kind of tune decks to play as they want, and that's the best part about playing these kind of games, is every deck kind of is your own. So I'm just trying to give a little bit of direction at the few different decks that we have available to us now. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and peace out.